kushombisa lokungari ringateka ntombile bayangena lomuya babu teka kushombisa lokungari ringateka ntombile bayangena lomuya babu teka kushombisa lokungari ringateka ntombile bayangena lomuya babu teka
Have ever had a conversation with you, well, I hope you were kind to them. I also want to acknowledge Gordon J. from Namibia, who's doing a lot of great things over there. Thank you so much, Gordon, for passing by. We really appreciate you. And we want to send love to everyone who's in this place, who's doing something. If we didn't single you out, it's not that we can't see you. We appreciate you with all that we have. Now, for the next session, which we're diving into immediately, and as with every other session, we'll have a presentation and we have a question and answer segment. This one will take a bit of a twist because we are going to have a presentation. We're going to have a sort of fireside chat along with it. Then we'll open the floor for questions. To help us with that is Tanaka Kachara from Scanlon and Holderness. She will explore the legal side of the business, looking at legal complexities faced by professionals in the music industry in relation to intellectual property. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Tanaka Kachara.
Afternoon, everybody. Can everyone hear me clearly? Thank you. As has been said by Arnold, my name is Tanaka Margaret Kachara. I am an IP lawyer practicing with Scanlon and Holderness here in Harare, Zimbabwe. So today I'm going to be talking about the legal complexities faced by professionals in the music industry in relation to intellectual property. The outline of my presentation is that we're going to have an introduction and a definition of the key terms. After that, we'll look at the applicable laws and related bodies in our Zimbabwean context. We'll look at the copyright law, both nationally and internationally, and the role of publishers in management of intellectual property rights. We'll then look at the legal challenges faced by musicians in protecting their intellectual property rights, and finally, the solutions and recommendations to those problems. So the music industry, basically that's an ecosystem that focuses on the creation, the recording, and distribution of music for the consumption of the public. So there are several stakeholders that form part of this ecosystem. And I'm so happy that some of them have been called to this conference. Some of them have already spoken. I'm sure some are going to speak after me. So basically, these are songwriters, producers, publishers, and distributors. Thank you. Then intellectual property itself basically means a creation of the mind. So if you write a song, that's a creation that you've created right there and should be protected because that is your intellectual property. Intellectual property law relates to the legislation that protects and promotes intellectual property rights, the work, right, the creations that have been created by creators or authors of the work. Then the rights are simply the benefits of protecting your creation. So in our Zimbabwean context, we've got the Copyright and Neighboring Rights Act, Chapter 2605, which protects copyrights in the Zimbabwean context. It gives a definition of what a copyright is, and that is a right which subsists in a work and entitles the owner to exclusive use and to authorize others to use such works in Zimbabwe. The other relevant statute is the Trademarks Act, Chapter 2604, which defines a trademark as a symbol or a mark or a tagline that is used in the course of business for purposes of distinguishing your work. So you find that in the music industry globally, most artists have trademarked not only their names but also statements. I'm just going to give examples of those in the regional and international markets. So Taylor Swift, Jay-Z, Beyonce, Burna Boy in the African context, those are some of the artists that have trademarked their names. So I can't create or say that I've got a stage name and my name is Beyonce. It sounds like Beyonce, and so I can't do that. You can't do that because she has trademarked her name for purposes of distinguishing the work. We the Best, or another one by DJ Khaled, that's also a tagline or taglines that are trademarked by the artist, and the famous Okru by Cardi B, that also is a trademarked tagline. So what is the relevance of such registration? The relevance is brand protection, like I've already said, for purposes of distinguishing yourself. So in our Zimbabwean context, I'd like to give examples of names or taglines that could be trademarked. So generally, stage names can be trademarked by every artist if you want to distinguish your work and to protect that work. Then I know Tami Moyo always says in her songs, Tami, so that as well can be trademarked. And there are also very popular taglines like Dengendanwati. I think there's one that says that, for purposes of distinguishing that. And some artists go on to create merchandise and sell for commercial benefit. So you can't then have anyone using your tagline. So those are some of the important reasons why you should protect your intellectual property. Related bodies. So in Zimbabwe, we've got the Zimbabwe Intellectual Property Office, the ZIPO. It is responsible for the registration of intellectual property rights. So right now, as we stand as Zimbabwe, we don't have the infrastructure for actual registration of copyrights, but for trademarks and all other sorts of types of intellectual property, they can be registered at the ZIPO. Then we've got the Zimbabwe Music Rights Association. This is an organization that was created for purposes of bridging the gap between musicians or artists and the public, and entities that basically use music in their day-to-day. So if your music is used in films or commercials, the Zimura is your go-to body to assist you with not only making sure that your IP is protected, but also with the collection of royalties, making sure that you get the worth of your work. Okay, so now I will move on to deal with copyright law in the Zimbabwean context. As I have already said before, a copyright is a right which subsists in a work and entitles the owners to exclusive use and authorize others to use such works. So what copyright gives to an artist, it is the exclusive use. You're the only person who can use your song that you've written or the song that you have sung. And so maybe later on we'll deal with how the different parts of producing, right? When you actually have a song, someone has written the song. So because we've got artists in here, by show of hands, how many people write songs? How many people write and perform their own songs? How many people write songs for others and don't necessarily perform? Thank you. So it is very, very important to know the rights that belong to you and the rights that don't belong to you. So if you've not written a song, you cannot get royalties or money for the lyrics of the song. At the same time, if you've written a song and you've not performed it, you can't get rights or money for the actual recording and the distribution or the sales in the music. There are certain rights that accrue to a writer. There are certain rights that accrue to the person who's going to perform that song. So the nature of copyright is that it's like all other intellectual property rights, it gives exclusive rights. So without authorization, you cannot use somebody else's work. Secondly, it is territorial. Intellectual property rights are territorial, so they are protected where they are registered. In this case, normally in the Zimbabwean context, if you're there and your work is produced in Zimbabwe, you're protected in Zimbabwe. The other thing is that with copyright, it is automatic. The moment that pen on paper and you've created your work, it is automatically protected. And the lifespan of a copyright is the lifetime of the author and 50 years after their death. So I'll give an example of Oliver Mtukudzi. It hasn't been 50 years yet, so his work is still copyrighted. So you can't just go to a concert and start singing Mtukudzi's songs without authorization. So those are some of the good things about copyright. It doesn't die with you. It lives on after you pass on. Eligible works that can be protected under copyright. You've got literary works, musical works, artistical works, and sound recordings. So all those are the types of works that can be protected under the Copyright Act. Next, we'll look at the ownership. So ownership vests with the author, like I've already said. The person who created the work is the owner of that copyright. In certain circumstances, some people sell their rights. So once you've sold them to somebody else, so you compose a song and you sell it and someone else performs it, at that point they're now owning the song in terms of lyrics and also the performance. So you can't come back later and say, oh no, you've made $10 million, it's my song. No, if you've sold it, it's not yours anymore, just like with any other property that we have. We've already dealt with the rights, exclusive rights. No one can use copyrighted work without authorization from the owner. And the term, like I've said, it's the lifetime of the author and 50 years after that. On the international and regional scale, we've got the Berne Convention, which is an international convention on the protection of literary and artistic works. This was founded in 1886, and it is administered by the World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO. As it stands today, there are 181 states that are signatories to that convention. What the International Convention does is that, like I've already said, copyright is automatic. So for all the artists that are in those 181 states, their work is protected under copyright. Secondly, the International Convention provides for what we call national treatment. So their work should be protected in every country as the same way that that country protects the works of its local artists. So if Ja Praiser, for example, goes to the UK or to the US, his work is protected there in the same way that they protect Beyonce's work or Jay-Z's work. So those are some of the benefits of having our country as part of those international conventions. It means that your work is protected regardless of where you are. In Africa, we've got the Kampala Protocol on voluntary registration of copyright and related rights. So this protocol also carries similar sentiments as the International Convention. Unfortunately or fortunately, we're moving as Africa towards the ratification of that protocol. So as it stands, Namibia is the only country that has actually signed and ratified the Kampala Protocol, and we're hoping that everyone else in Africa will be moving towards that. So once that is done, you'll be able to do proper registration in the African Regional Intellectual Property Office, ARIPO. I'll move on to deal with the role of publishers in the music industry. So publishers play a pivotal role and serve as intermediaries between musicians or artists and various entities that use, distribute music, ensuring that creators are compensated for their works. So part of the duties or the roles that are played by publishers is to ensure that the copyright of the artist is protected, their work is copyrighted, and that there's proper administration. It is clear who owns the work. Secondly, they license the music to third parties. So they are responsible for tracking which radio stations have played your music, which filmmakers have used your music, which commercials have included your music, and collecting that money that is owed to you and paying it back to you. So that then ties into royalty collection. They're responsible for collecting all the money that is due to the artist and making sure that they're getting a fair amount in relation to their work. And then they also do marketing and promotion, basically promoting your work, making sure that people know that you've got this music that you've produced or that you've created, and promoting that in the different spheres and spaces in the music industry. Now, the challenges that are faced by artists. The biggest that I have seen in my time that I've practiced as an IP lawyer is lack of knowledge on ownership rights. Artists don't know where their rights lie. Like I've said at the beginning, there are some rights that lie in just composing the song. There are rights that lie in just performing the song. And so some artists don't even know where their rights are. Some don't even know that they have rights. They just think you just produce music and that's it. If people like it, they like it. If they don't. So they're actually not making an effort in understanding what it means to own rights in music, what the value of their work actually is in legal terms. The second issue is gentlemen's agreements. These are very common. People are not reducing anything to writing. So we meet over coffee, we agree that, oh, you're going to give me the song, I'm going to perform it, then we're going to share profits. That's not written down. The person who performs the song, in most cases, becomes the popular one, and the composer doesn't. So you find that most people create work, get into these verbal agreements, and at the end of the day don't get anything. They don't get economic benefit from their works. So gentlemen's agreements are also some of the challenges that are being faced. In piracy and other forms of violation of rights, piracy is basically the reproduction of your work without your authorization, and in most cases, the work is sold for nominal fees. So I'm sure most of us have encountered vendors that have flash discs or just your normal CDs, and they're selling all these albums for $1 to $5 for work that the artist would be selling for maybe $20 to $50. So those are some of the challenges that artists are facing and ultimately failing to realize economic benefit from their work. The solutions to those challenges, firstly, awareness. As an artist, take time to understand what rights flow from the work that you do. We've got WIPO, which is the World Intellectual Property Organization. They've got free courses on intellectual property. The most basic, you don't need to be a lawyer to study those courses. Anyone has access to their website, enroll, understand what intellectual property is, understand what copyright is, so that you understand what your rights are, and that will help you to actually also protect them. ZIPTA is the Zimbabwean Patent and Trademarks Agents Association. It's an institute. From time to time, they give external trainings. And I'm also happy to say Farai Ngube yesterday in the morning spoke about how the British Council is always giving trainings to assist artists and musicians in their work to understand their rights. I'll also just add, since the director of the National Arts Council is here, it would be really helpful to also have mentorship programs. And I think Tina Wachkoka spoke about that earlier, that it is necessary to have mentorship programs so that the musicians that have been at it for a long time also help those that are coming up and provide them with the necessary information and skills that they need in protecting their work as musicians in this industry. Secondly, it is important to have a business strategy. So I asked earlier about the works that are being done. So for the artists that are here, how many of you, by way of raising hands, how many have a business strategy? None. How many of you have spoken to a lawyer before? Well done. And for those that haven't, it's important to have a legal strategy as well. And when we're speaking about business strategies, I mentioned earlier that, most artists, or some of them, are excited about a once-off payment. So you get $5,000 right now, and you're so excited, you sign off your rights, and you've let go of 10 million over a period of 10 years. So those are some of the things that you need to be aware of. When you're selling your rights, what is it that you're selling? What is the potential that is in that work? Because basically, why is the other person interested in buying your work? So you need to know that before you just dive into getting a big once-off payment and then lose out on so much more over a long period of time. So the other important thing is to actually understand how you can commercialize your intellectual property rights. So I've already said that Zimura here in Zimbabwe works with artists and collects their royalties, but also it's important to branch out. When a song is a hit and the statement is trending, I think it was Simbarashi in the morning who spoke about Pira Dendi. It's been popping and trending on social media. If they create merchandise, sweaters and caps and all of that with that tagline on them, they're also able to expand and create more money for themselves and not just wait for that one line of business. So it's still important to commercialize your intellectual property rights. Thirdly, to invest in a lawyer. I know the running statement is that lawyers are too expensive and all of that, but it's important to have them on your team. And having contracts that are legally binding in place. Understanding what the contract says, because for some people, they sign a contract without even reading and without understanding what it is they are tying themselves to. So it is important to take time to review the contract before you sign it, to understand what is required from you before you sign it, and to understand what you should expect from the other party before you sign the contract. So those are some of the things that would certainly help artists legally in the music industry in Zimbabwe. So in conclusion, I think education and solid business strategies together with mentorship programs, I really think mentorship programs will help, and trainings. Those are the things that would really help artists in Zimbabwe to deal with the legal challenges that they're currently facing. So that's it on the presentation part of it.
I know for a fact you have a burning question. Keep it short, keep it precise. Let's go.
Thank you. Miriam Patsanza is my name. Is there a way of rectifying a mistake or revising of a contract or agreement that an artist would have made before having the insight or knowledge that they have obtained today, as to protect their IP?
Okay. So most contracts have an amendment clause. That's what we call it, an amendment clause. And so for those that actually haven't signed the contract, make sure that an amendment clause is there in your contract before you sign it. What it does is that it allows you to then change the terms you would have to be in agreement with the other party, of course, but it gives you room to amend the contract should the need arise. Yeah?
Good day.
Good day.
If you're a Zim-Hip-Hop fan, you've probably heard the voice that says, "So you know, John produced it." And that's my voice. And it was a gentleman's agreement, which I'm not going to do anything about it because we're cool. But for the benefit of other artists, is it then possible to then stake a claim at any time? Or if it was a gentleman's agreement, then that's it? Thank you.
So a gentleman's agreement can be enforced. I'm not saying that it can't, but the chances of following it through are very slim, because it is just an agreement based on trust and integrity. You're banking on the fact that the other party will own up to their word. So that is why it is important to have everything reduced to writing, because you then have an agreement in place that you can show in a court of law that we entered into an agreement and this is what they can say. So in your case, you can enforce it. You could start by just having a normal discussion with the other party. Tell them that this is what we agreed on, and can I get protection or can I get economic value from my work? But from today onwards, please make sure that everything is in writing. Yeah.
Good afternoon. So when making a song, there are many people involved. There's the artist, there's the producer, and there's the songwriter. So I want to know what the songwriter is entitled to, what the producer is entitled to, and what the artist who then performs the song is entitled to.
Okay. So I think we'd need a whole segment on that, but I would just deal with the songwriter and the performer. So the songwriter is entitled to publishing rights, right? Which is having the lyrics put out there onto the public market, right? And then the performer is entitled to the sound recording. So as a composer or the songwriter, you have rights to authorize the actual singing of your lyrics by an artist. And so when you get royalties, when the song is produced, you also get to have a say, to a certain extent, on how the song should sound. Because remember, the composer or the songwriter is the one who has written this, who provides the structure of the song. What is the verse, what is the chorus, and things like that. So you get rights, what we call publishing rights. And then for the performer, they get what we call recording rights. So how many sales have they made? And they get, those are the rights that they have. Because ultimately it is their voice and their singing that is then bringing in the sales. Yeah.
Okay, my question is based on collaborative work. Mm-hmm. Let's say there's two individuals who have created a piece of artwork. Is it possible to have a combined copyright? And what happens in the event that they fall out?
Okay, so firstly, it is possible to have more than one owner of copyright. So it can really be the two of you, it can be the three of you. A company can even own copyright. So it's possible to collaborate, like you're saying. And then if you fall out, remember what I said at the beginning, it is important to have everything in writing. And also anticipate that. It's not you being negative, it's you being smart. What happens when we have a fallout? Who's going to take what? Because sometimes people co-own, but they're not equally owning the copyright. So have all of that in writing. If we make $1 million, are we splitting 50-50? Or is it 60% at 40%? So the important thing about collaborating and all the work that comes in doing that is having everything reduced to writing. Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to take you back a little bit to when you spoke about writers' royalties as well as the performers' royalties. Mm-hmm. Do you have information whether Zimura actually has these things in place? Where, for example, if an artist goes to collect their royalties and they're just the singer, if they can get that, or do they have to rely on a split sheet, which is the agreement that you're talking about. I don't know if I've structured that question properly.
All right. So I think when you're registering to become a member of Zimura, it is important to highlight right from the get-go what is it that you own. And so this is important, particularly for songwriters, because I've met a number of songwriters who are not getting anything from their work because they never actually went out to say, look, I took part in that. So it is important to provide them with such details, because when they do have that information, they then make sure that everyone is getting what their work is worth. So yes, I'd like to believe they've got a split sheet. I think I've heard of that in one of the conversations I've had before, and they can only effectively implement that when they have all the information that they need. So when your work has been put out there, firstly, before we even get to Zimura, make sure the agreement shows and states clearly that you're also part of the work that's being done. So if you wrote a song and you've given it to Tanaka to sing, make sure that there's something in writing showing that. And so when you go to Zimura, you've got proof that, look, we actually agreed that she was going to perform on the song that I had written, and so I've got rights to be protected, and so I should get royalties as well. Yeah.
And what does that look like in digital distribution?
So it would probably be the same. The real issue, like I'm saying, comes right at the beginning, behind the scenes, before the music is out there. You need to ensure that in writing, it is clear that you own something in the song. So whoever is going to use the song, wherever it's going to be distributed, where there's money, you're going to earn only if you can prove that you're supposed to earn from there. So I think the key words today are a written contract and authorization.
Don't just write songs, write contracts.
Yeah.
So my question is, if you are inspired by the world, allow the world to be inspired by you. What material can then get copyrights?
Sorry, I didn't quite get your question.
What is the question?
There's nothing new under the sun. So if I produce something, then 50 years later, an artist decides to produce something similar, can they get copyrights to that material?
Okay, so your work has to be original. That's also a very key part of works that can be protected under copyright law. It has to be original. So like I said, the works of an artist are protected for their lifetime and 50 years after that. I even gave an example of Oliver Mtukudzi that just because he's dead, it doesn't mean that a new artist can come up with Neria and get rights from it. It's not original, it is his, it is still protected. So as a new artist, you also have to come up with original work, and that is the work that can be protected under copyright law.
I'm taking 2 more questions before we wrap up this session.
Thank you very much. My name is Kim Makumbe. I would like to find out about sampling. What are the specifics when it comes to sampling? When I did hear there's a time limit to the, let's say, amount of a song that is within your song, which is not yours, which can be struck with the copyright, and another length which is insignificant. So could you please shed more light in terms of the law on sampling?
Okay, so if I understand it correctly, sampling is basically using someone's music and creating your own work. So authorization would still be required. When work is put on the public market for public consumption, it is protected under copyright. So you can't just recreate, because what you're saying basically is, can I recreate someone's work and not be caught under copyright law? The answer is you need authorization to do that. So even from a manager or from their manager or anyone else who's on their team who's protecting their work, it is important to get that.
One of the issues in hip-hop for a long time, why hip-hop albums would always delay releases, is because the label was trying to clear samples. And clear samples simply means that you're now trying to get authorization after the fact. So because that artist was signed on to another label, and there was a whole chain of people who needed to authorize that, clearing samples was very hard. That's what delayed certain albums from coming out without specific singles and a lot of that. So authorization is something you cannot run away from. We got a question over at the back, so we'll go to the back, then come here, then we...
Hello guys, my name is Ernest. I wanted to ask, what happens if someone tries to copyright a work that was done by someone who is not popular, and probably they just come up with that, and then it's not popular, and then someone comes and try to copyright that?
Okay, so firstly, the unpopular person, their work is already protected under copyright law by virtue of having created an original piece of work. And when someone else then comes up to you, so that's actually something that happens a lot. There is a lot of excitement in sharing your work without protecting the work. So it is important for artists, before you share, you can even have a non-disclosure agreement that actually states that this is your work, you're sharing it with the next person, and you're not giving it to them. So it is always important to have agreements in writing. I can't stress this enough. You need to protect your work. And I understand that right now we might not have the proper legal infrastructure to actually do the protection. But while we wait on National Arts Council and the government to push for the amendment or the creation of legislation, artists should do what they can to protect their work, because it is very personal. This is your work, it is your money. You should be very intentional about it. So don't just put your work out there and hope that the other person is honorable enough to give you a shout out. No, they won't, because they're also looking for money. So you have to make sure that you've protected your work before you share it with others, even your best friend, because it's sad when we then have to deal with issues like that, where someone loses their work and the work actually becomes very popular and makes a lot of money, but they're not getting anything from it because they didn't take the very simple initial steps that are required to protect their work.
Yes, over there. But whilst you're there, we recently saw an issue in South Africa with Maporisa and Samkele, something Soweto. And there was that whole issue of, I own the masters, but you recorded at my studio, so I own everything. But you're saying, but I performed in the song, I even wrote the song, but I was not credited, and all that. How can artists safeguard from some of that, even after the fact? How can we navigate that world a little bit better?
Okay, so to avoid having to deal with things after the fact, when you and I sit down and decide that we're going to create something, let's reduce our thoughts to writing so that it is clear. Because I'm sure when they started the work, they were getting along. They were meeting AES, they were vibing.
Yeah.
So the problems always come afterwards. So before you get caught up in the excitement of actually doing the work, let's have everything reduced to writing first. Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
Miriam again, Music Crossroads. I just want to ask Tanaka, do you have at Scullen and Holderness, do you have a desk for the artist to come and talk to you on payment plans, of course, and as you assist them? Because it's not like these things, they happen once. It's something that is ongoing. Do you have a desk that caters for the artist? And is there a payment, a fee for the whole year, or what? What's the plan?
Okay, so thank you very much. Let me also take this opportunity to tell you about the firm that I work with. Scanlon and Holderness is a full-service commercial law firm based here in Harare, Zimbabwe. We've got an intellectual property law and entertainment law department that I work under. So yes, you can come to our offices and we're able to assist you. the fee structure depends really on what it is that you want us to work on. So those are some of the things that we'll then have a discussion on once you knock on our doors. But we are located at Kebs Center, the 13th floor on 74 Jason Moyer Avenue.
I'm sure Tanaka is still here for the conference, so if you have a burning question that you would like to be addressed, please feel free to bother her. She'll be available. Get a business card, get a phone number, plug into what's happening over there. Tanaka, do you have any other closing remarks or anything that you're burning that you'd like to leave us with?
Reduce everything to writing. Thank you.
Tanaka Kachara, ladies and gentlemen. Even marriages start with a written document. Chapter 37. But thank you so much, Tanaka. That was so good. It's a sobering truth that we needed to be reminded of. Now, without much further ado, I would like to engage the next panel. This one is right down my alley because it's media. We are looking at data-driven decision-making with a special focus on how do analytics inform marketing strategies, touring decisions, and fan engagement. Now, to help us with that conversation is someone I really look up to in the business, Steve Vickers from Star FM. If we could just help them. And all the way from South Africa, he is lead music channels at MultiChoice. Help me welcome David Molotlanyi. And so I used to do a 10 to 2 p.m. slot on ZFM. And for a long time, he was my nemesis because he was doing a similar time slot, but in Matebeleland, and it was a similar kind of show, but he knows who won that. Help me welcome Posendi Ndaba from Skies Metro FM. Now, gentlemen, I have to be honest, we find ourselves in a very interesting time in media. For the first time, it's no longer just about curating tastes. More than ever now, we have to look at the data because the data is informing us something. It was never always like that. Now, to just start this conversation and break the ice and sort of like find our way through that conversation, how's that working out for you? I'd like to start with you, Posenti. How's that affecting programming? How is it affecting decisions within the radio station and with our in and around media? How's that working out for you?
Thanks very much. It's quite interesting because now a radio back then used to be the leader. A radio used to influence trends, used to influence people's tastes. But now social media is what's influencing a lot of things. So as radio, you have to follow through and see what are the trends, what is popping, what is happening. But also at the same time, we still need to play a role, especially from where I come from, Bulawayo. Radio still plays a role in trying to influence the tastes of people. So what happens, someone will listen to the song on radio and then want to go and look for it afterwards. I know in other places the reverse is true, where it pops on the streets and then it ends up on the radio. So for us, that is the dynamics that we currently have for the Matebeleland region.
David, how's that looking over a channel?
Hi everyone. So for us, I'll speak on the two channels that I won't say priority, but 1 and 2 for us, which is Channel O, as well as Mzansi Magic Music. Very different demographics, very different people. With Channel O specifically, for us, it went to looking at radio charts using RAMs reports, to now looking at TikTok charts. We're looking at TikTok charts. We're looking at other social avenues, because what's happening now is what's going to drive your decisions for ad spend and how you're going to target where you market for viewers, in this case, is directly proportional to the demographics you're speaking to. So we are a youth channel, so we must look at the youth segment. So a TikTok, for instance, is quite important. Spotify, YouTube, all of that allows you to be very specific in how you're going to target the audience. And by virtue of that, the game has changed 100%. Back in the day when I was in varsity, I used to host a breakfast show on campus, and really all I had was to listen to Metro FM on Saturdays. If their chart matches the magazine, there's a magazine that used to come out monthly. If those two correspond, then that song is good, and it will drive how we program. So it has changed a lot.
And Uncle Steve, how's that looking over at Zim Papers Radio at Star?
Yeah, it's interesting. What year was that, David, when you were on air?
2005.
Right, okay.
For a second, I thought it was 1965.
Hello, everyone, and it's great to have the privilege of speaking here. Shout out to H1 representing Star FM and IATI as well. I started out on radio in 1986.
Like different ball game.
38 years ago, so I even go back another generation to David, when the only interaction between listeners and a radio station was writing a letter, would you believe? Now we can contact a station instantly through WhatsApp, through social media as well. So things have changed a lot. We are nowhere near as far down this digital road as you are in South Africa. We don't have the same depth of analytics, of market research that is pretty standard in South Africa and many other countries. So we use a mix. We've got the ZAMPS research, which comes out every 6 months, if that. We do a bit of in-house, but not that much. So we're using what we have, plus a bit of the old-fashioned intuition as well. We're a national station, so we're competing with Posenti for his listeners as well. So we're keeping an eye on the charts in Bulawayo as well. But sometimes I'll ask H1, our music manager, why is this song on rotation on our playlist? Because this is an obscure song from years ago. Give us a wave, H1.
Can please someone just keep a mic on standby on H1?
So I'll say, why on earth is this song on rotation on our playlist? And he'll say, because it's on TikTok. And because he's younger than me, he follows TikTok, and it's his job to know what's happening. And that is a valid argument for us to put music on our playlist, because it's trending on TikTok. So we use a whole load of different metrics. Some of them are real analytics. Others, would I say, intuition or a feeling. When we go out, we can tell what music is being played in certain places. That gives us a reassurance. And of course, the great thing about radio is that we can break new artists as well. And that's one of the exciting things that we do. And at Star FM, because local is absolutely our DNA. There are countless artists that we've helped to break or to grow. Then in terms of our charts, we use the metrics of playlist as our main criteria for our Star Hit List chart. We've moved away from voting because it's not really watertight. It's easily manipulated. So we look at airplay, and also we look at stuff like your Apple Zim charts, like Holy Tens, Delilah was really trending when it came out, and we put it straight in at number 1 on our chart because we knew that was the hottest song at the moment, and there's been a couple of others like that this year as well. So we're not as far down the road as David, and so we're using common sense to intuition quite a part of the way.
Not really common on TikTok, but Uncle Steve, if you could just stay there for a little bit. It's one thing to read the data, it's another thing to translate it into strategy. Now, can you just take a deep dive on that process, because you sit at the table where that happens, where you're looking at numbers, but they're just numbers. It has to be crystallized into strategy, right? How does that work?
Okay, so about 3.5 years ago, we recalibrated Star FM from being all things to everyone, from kids to 70 years old. We focused on urban 18 to 35 as our target market, which meant we sacrificed some listeners who are older than that, although older people still listen to my show, and those are a bit mature, listen to Ayati.
I cannot believe the president is not part of your demographic.
But that recalibration helped us a lot because we know who we're targeting. We lost some listeners, but we have really gone very big in that target bracket, so we know what is big and relevant to our urban 18 to 35. So some stuff simply doesn't make it because it doesn't fit that market. And also, I should also say some stuff does come through other routes like your Zim Dance or your mixtapes and stuff. We have a lot of stuff that comes on our Zim Dancehall show through Zim through mixtapes that are trending around Zim as well. So we've got this main metric of 18 to 35 urban as our target, and that informs a lot of our decisions.
David, how do you guys crystallize from having them as just data?
So I must say, it's like you were in the room. That's exactly what we did with Channel O 2 years ago. So 2 years ago, the Channel O mantra and go-to was music over everything, because we were music first, music-centric, everything. Then we realized that, I like to say, we're catering for the couch. And the danger with that is everybody's watching at home where there's one TV, and we're not really targeting anyone. So it makes it very difficult to plan and to strategize on certain things that you want to do. So what we did 2 years ago is we changed it to youth over everything and became a youth channel, where music is the baseline. However, it's one of the pillars which we can touch on sex, we can touch on finances, we can touch on the difference in what youth are struggling with today as opposed to what they did back in the day, because it changes all the time. Now it's mental health instead of apartheid, for example. So we became youth-centric, but what it did is it now, again, made us alienate a lot of people, which we obviously call the spillover, but we are focused now 16 to 28. But I'm 37, and I still want. Why are you laughing? But I believe I'm also a target market of the channel, because we're not necessarily age-based, but we are culture-based. We're selling culture now, right? And once you know what culture it is that you're selling, it becomes easier also to look at the data when it's presented to you and say, oh, okay, this is a demographic, and X amount of 13-year-olds to 24-year-olds listen to us on weekends and at 3 p.m. Why 3 p.m.? Oh, because it's after school. Schools finish at 1:15. They get home at 2. The parents come home at 6 p.m. before they watch their telenovelas and soapies. So the kids actually have 3 hours of TV a day between 2 o'clock and 6 o'clock. And that's why we're going to call this slot after school, and we're only going to play the TikTok songs or whatever's trending. And it's kind of like Top 40 radio on TV is literally between 2 and 5. And that's how we strategized it before we start competing with the soapies.
Percent, if you could take the same question, how do you use data as a station, as Skies Metro, as a business to try to then make it a strategy?
So with Sky's Metro, it's totally different from the other two. The fact that when we came in, we were the only radio station that was broadcasting from Bulawayo. So our strategy in the beginning was to give the people of Bulawayo something that they felt was their own, which is where the tagline Esabantu came in to say, look, this is yours. You've said you didn't have something that's yours for a while. So as the years went by, we started noticing to say, okay, breakfast, who actually listens to the breakfast show? Who actually listens? So what we've done is we've more or less segmented each and every show to target a certain different audience. And this has been coming through from the fact that when we go out and speak to people, you start realizing, okay, this breakfast show, this is where your decision makers, this is where your ministers, this is where your key decision makers within the city, when they're taking the kids to school in the morning, this is what they're listening to, this is what they want to hear. And then you move on to the next show, it also has a different demographic. Fine, you might have a bit of spillover from the breakfast to the mid-morning. And then also, because of our coverage, we can't ignore the people on the outlying areas of Bulawayo. So the music changes for that demographic. And then when you move into the afternoon, it's a totally different demographic. It's a bit of a tricky matrix because it keeps us on the toes, because we have to keep quickly going back and finding out, is the formula okay? But for now, we are in a process of re-strategizing because competition has come in. Kulumani came in. Now you got Nasty FM also within our area. We hear Polly also wants to bring in a radio station. So we're constantly on our toes. Our big brother there also wants to come in and pick up some of our listeners within that space. So we're constantly on our toes and trying to analyze as much data as we can and as quickly as we can. Unfortunately, we're not as updated as the South African market is, where they can tell you, okay, digitally you can get the stats to say breakfast has got so many people tuned in at this particular time, and they can actually be able to tell you this is the song that was the hit yesterday. We're not there yet, but we are finding very creative ways to actually keep on the ball in terms of analyzing those numbers on a regular basis.
Numbers tell a story. If you look at numbers anytime, they'll tell you a story. However, in numbers telling a story, there's also a story that numbers do not tell. That's why the eye test or the ear test is very important, or just the ground test is very important. Now, from the positions that you gentlemen sit, how do you balance the narrative of the numbers versus actually the intangibles, the story that's not in the numbers, but a very important story that needs to be captured? How do you balance that?
So I think the term is crowdsourced. I don't know the real term. I'm not a marketer, but I know it's got to do with crowds and sourcing information. But it's crowdsourced engagement where really you have to be on the ground. Again, going back to the strategy of youth over everything. Another challenge we had is that the people we're targeting have a very low attention span and would rather be online on YouTube, on TikTok again, on Instagram, than be watching TV at home, appointment viewing. At 6 o'clock, I'm going to watch 1, 2, 3. So you're also facing that, right? So what you need to do is go on the ground and find out with events. We partner with a lot of events. And when you're at events, that's a great opportunity to get data for free, because all you have to do is engage with the people, speak to the people. You get to see what they like, what they don't like. We recently worked with Red Bull to do a symphonic with Gabza the Small, where it's orchestra meets amapiano. And we didn't know if it's going to work or not. Red Bull says they knew it's going to work, so we jumped onto that. But on our end, what we did was we started partnering with Gabza the Small on different events leading up to that to see the his hardcore fans and the spillovers that are going to actually buy tickets, speak to them and find out, will this thing work? What do you think of this? Do you think it's a good idea? Blah, blah, blah. So it really takes engagement, and the brand, whether it's a radio station or a television station or an artist or whatever it is, it needs to be tangible. People must be able to approach it in that way. You are getting so much free information that's going to work for you.
Uncle Steve, is it true that data-driven programming or data-driven fan engagement or data-driven decisions have taken the soul out of a lot of products?
Potentially, yes. So I'm kind of thankful that we're not that far down the road here, because I was in the UK in July and listened to a lot of radio there. It's kind of quite robotic, let's say, because they've got their very tightly measured target audience. Their playlist is extremely carefully selected. Their clocks, the running order is very, very tight, and it kind of lacks personality in some cases, but they're giving the music and the content that their target audience wants. So I'm kind of thankful that we're not that far down that road. We do a lot of events as well, and when we get to talk to listeners, that's really inspiring, and it does give us the untold stories outside of our programming, and it's hugely encouraging, because someone will tell you that this show changed my life, or this song changed my life, or this presenter's done so much for me. Those personal stories, you can't pick those, obviously, with analytics. And so when we meet listeners and chat with them, we get a lot of info from them. One of the shows that gives me a headache is DJ Mox on the TXO. Because we're the kings of Mjolo at Star FM. It's all that we talk about from Monday to Sunday. And the show that gets me in trouble most with BAS, the Broadcasting Authority, is the TXO, because they push the boundary for daytime radio as to what they should be talking about, and BAS doesn't like sexual innuendo, and they're the masters of it. Yeah. So we had a recent event at Dombashawa at the Rocks there, and Mox was there, and somebody was asking for their selfie with Mox, and I asked, what do you like about him? He said, I just love the content on his show. I love the topics they talk about. Just a day or two after I'd issued him, he had another warning for too much Mjolo on the show. So that listener interaction really gives you a lot of security, but also we'll get some listeners who'll say, what you did on that show was really special for me, and it helped me a lot in my life. So yeah, the fact that we don't only rely on the analytics, it gives us a different side as well, and we don't want to take that soul out of radio and for it to become that mechanical, which it can be if you're really analytical. Also for musicians, one thing I should say is, as radio, our key purpose is not to play music as such. As commercial radio, our key purpose is to play adverts. That's why we exist as commercial radio and TV as well. So we want to generate a certain audience that we sell to advertisers and make money. So it's more important for us to be playing adverts than to be playing music, although, of course, the music is a key component in generating the audience. But if somebody ejects a song, they won't get in trouble, but if they don't play an advert, they will. So when we're selecting music, it's key that it fits in with our target audience in terms of that metric. Yeah. So
I was almost about to put you on the ballot paper before that sentence. Now, Percent, if you could just answer the same question and give us an idea of how you balance data-driven decision-making and the unwritten story that's not found in data, but that's tangible within the audiences we're trying to reach.
We also do events, not internally as a station, but we do partner with a couple of events that also do take place in Bulawayo, and that also gives us a bit of background. But also another thing that we do that has also helped us to get feedback is when we do either road shows or there's a shop opening, so you'll send a particular presenter there, and that when that presenter is there, you get to feed off from the people that are attending to see what the vibe is from there, because that's not the vibe that you can get from any data. No matter what type of research you try and do, you won't pick up the unwritten, like the feeling that you get from when the presenter is interacting with a particular audience. Like Steve said, we're commercial, but one thing that we have noticed is we have a show in the evening which has interesting numbers, which the advertisers are not interested in. In the evening, you've got good listenership, but as much as you try and push that to the advertisers, they're not really that interested, but the numbers are good. So it also comes back to say you're trying to find that balance between the numbers and the feeling, and trying to come up with a strategic decision to say, okay, should you move that show to daytime? Will it work? Back and forth. But so far, I think feeling and the combination of analyzing the data is the best combination that can work.
Gentlemen, I'm going to premise my question with a little anecdote, and hopefully it will lead us to questions. I had the privilege of interning at Kaya FM in 2017, back when Greg Maloka was still at the helm. And I spent a lot of time there in the creative spaces of the business and in the administrative side of the business. And in my life, I had not encountered at that point, which was 2017, data-driven decision-making, but it's how they were using the data that I found fascinating. They had a whole research and development department, which was headed at the time by Retumetse, and they were doing such phenomenal work. They knew exactly who they were speaking to, who they were attracting, but they used the data to impact the market, not to follow the market. So if you went at Kaya at the time, they were not playing the number 1 song on the charts, they were playing the number 8 on the album. They were not playing the most popular song, they were playing the song that they felt the audience they're trying to attract would like. They were impacting the taste and doing all sorts of things, and I thought this was supposed to have an impact on the revenue until I attended the numbers meetings, and Kaya FM at the time, ahead of them was 947, was, if I'm not mistaken, Jacaranda, and Kaya was somewhere in there, still making the money, but still being so daring and just mind-blowing. And that shifted my thinking in how we approach these spaces. Now, my question to you, gentlemen, is how much daring are you to ignore the data, or how much are you using the data to impact new narratives, not to necessarily follow the narratives in your fan engagement?
Yeah, good question, and it's exciting to be doing new stuff and fresh stuff. I know Jacaranda that you mentioned, they never play hits, do they? They play former hits. That's their playlist. Yeah, so they don't break anything at all, and it's really exciting when we do break new songs or new artists, especially in dancehall. Temple Man has made contacts across the country with dancehall artists from way all over the country. He'll find Zim dancehall artists, and some of them have made it onto our playlist. And we want to be doing stuff that's fresh. And Zimbabwe is different from other countries in many ways, and we have to work together. The situation is difficult here, and we're very mindful of that as well. And local is what we're all about for Star FM. So we're always happy to be playing a part in breaking new artists and doing new stuff.
It's a very good question. And one thing we did, we saw the numbers that on a Friday night, there's 2 types of numbers. There's the actual ratings of how many people are watching, then there's an available audience. and you can see the available audience because your direct competitors is hitting those numbers, but you're not. So they're there, right? So we looked at that data and we thought to ourselves, what would happen? Yes, there's the BBCSA, who's obviously the ones who's going to give us a lashing should people complain. But what would happen if we put a club on TV for 3 hours? Let's call the Konka guys and put Konka Live on Channel O. And we literally fly on the wall. And for 3 hours, whatever happens, happens. That's dangerous because if somebody were to harm someone on live...
I think you're being modest.
You
It's
know?
very dangerous.
It's very dangerous. But we did it. We on season 4 this year. It's one of the highest rating shows. We took that audience. Almost 70% across all the other channels don't have that audience anymore. And I'm talking MTV-based Trace and the likes. So they're sitting there. So it's something that you got to try. We once tried to put McG on. He was on for a month. Said some shit. Sorry, said some stuff. And it had to go off, right?
Well, this is not Channel Law. Say that again.
So it had to go off because, people were complaining a lot. And we obviously regulated. We can only go as far. We're not as regulated as a public broadcaster because MultiChoice is obviously private, but we still have to adhere to the rules. It's a hit and miss, but you have to try.
You have to try. I like that. Pasenti?
Risks we do take, but you have to be super careful. We're actually in the process of experimenting at the moment with someone who gives me sleepless nights when they go on air because I'm not quite sure what he's likely to say. But from what we have seen, the traction that particular show. So we brought him in bit by bit just to, taste the waters once a week, seeing what happens, following week, see what happens. So we gave him a week to see. Well, so far, I haven't got a call from Buzz.
It's been a week.
Yeah. Though I had to walk into the studio and remind him, look, please go this way, not that way.
No. So what was your, before we give an opportunity for people to ask questions, and I guess I really need to hear something from H1. What can we advise the people who are artists and musicians here on how they can effectively use data to make decisions in touring decisions, fan engagement decisions, and everything around that? Because this is the world that all of you guys play in daily. These are decisions you have to make daily. What can we advise the artists concerning that?
The honest truth is, if you're an artist and you're not venturing into the world of and it's understanding your data, especially your data coming from your social media, you're not going to make it. I'll give people an example. At the moment, Babyface is actually testing the audience to see if he needs to release an album remixing songs that he wrote. And he's simply going on Instagram, just a small snippet of a small song. So obviously, you can tell what he's doing right now is to say, okay, will this song work? Because I think he does that every 2-3 days. It's a different song. It's a different song. He's got his guitar and he's saying, what if I did this with this song? So you can imagine what they're doing behind the scenes. We're all going in and saying, this is a great song. We're putting emojis. We're liking it. Imagine what's happening with that data in the back office. And our artists need to quickly jump onto that line. Because it will tell you when exactly you should release an album, when should you release a single, which country is actually following you and your music. So they need to jump onto it very fast.
I'm always so flabbergasted by the timing of when artists release songs. I'm like, why are you releasing a song right now? The numbers tell you no one is listening right now. It's December. We wanna, that That's what we want to do. We don't want to listen to your song, bro, and it's a ballad. Don't do that, right? But people just don't pay attention to the details. Yes.
Yeah, and it's on your point. It's actually alarming because those analytics are free, especially if you're an artist. You have them; they're right there, right? Also, if you're an artist, I assume you're with a distributor, so you'll have those analytics for you as well, right? If in your country, then you know that okay, in my country, there's seasons, right? Music, as you mentioned, is seasonal. When to drop, when not to drop. But it's so important to actually take it seriously as an artist and do it yourself, especially if you want to tour, let's say, the SADC region, and you're from Zim or you're from South Africa or wherever. You need to understand when is the weather fine in Cape Town for you to go there and it's not windy.
And it's
not important.
June. It's not June that time.
Exactly. You need to know when is festival season, when is this, when is that, outside of the analytics as well. But to be honest, there's many things I can say, but it all comes down to the artist being very professional and hands-on on their own craft. That's what it comes down to. And you can get assistance if you really want it.
Yeah, I agree. The clues are there, but also you're not going to stop what you're strategizing because you get one or two bad comments. So you've got to be careful how you interpret social media as well, because there can just be one section who's blowing stuff out of proportion.
Plus, also, data and analytics really give us insight on. There's the person you think you are, then there's the person you really are. Most of the times, data gives you the insight to who you really are, right? I was on radio for a better part of a decade. And on that decade, on radio, I was talking to mostly a female audience based off of the nature of the show I used to do. And that got stuck in my head. I started curating a YouTube channel, and whilst I was creating a YouTube channel, the analytics came out and it was middle-aged men. Bruh. And the reason for that was the content we were curating and who it connected with, right? And in the same vein, it's true of everything. It's numbers tell a story. And your job is to be able to read what that story is. I got a lot of cool stories to tell you, but I'm more interested in your question. So we're taking questions. You can direct them to Posenti, to David, or to Uncle Steve. All of are ready to answer your questions. Do we have any questions around? Yes, we've got a question over here.
Good afternoon, everyone. Is the mic on? Good afternoon, everyone. Dave, to go straight to the question, how do I dance around figures which look really good on Spotify? To give you context, I am Samuel Cosmic's manager. His figures are good on Spotify, and our audience is in Kenya and Europe. Yet in Africa, or locally in Zim, we're having a tough challenge connecting with our own local audience. So how do I connect or build a bridge between the figures on Spotify and bring them down to the tangible, as you were saying? Thank you.
It's a good question, because depending on the type of music you make, you might resonate with a different part of the world, right? I think with every artist, from where I'm standing anyway, it's always important to connect with your neighborhood first, your street. Then you grow from the street to the neighborhood, to the province, to the country, right? So it depends on your strategy as well. Are you a artist like, sorry, I'm going to reference a lot of South African artists because that's who I know. Are you an artist like Black Coffee where you're more celebrated and sell more in Ibiza, in Greece, the Mediterranean, than in South Africa? Or are you Kabza the Small who, if you had to have a concert now and next door is Black Coffee, people are going to go to Kabza the Small in Joburg over Black Coffee? So it really also depends on your end goal and not what's happening now with you. What's the 10-year strategy for the brand? Not the artist as a brand. So as a brand, what's the plan? Once you can answer that question, then I think, look, you might just say, I'll come back for a world tour in 20 years. I'm going to Kenya or I'm going to wherever. So you really need to understand your own plan.
Yeah, because Samuel Cosmic's song was Mogre, yeah? And yeah, it didn't stick around for long, but it had about a month on our chart, and it got to number 5 somewhere there. is a collaboration with the singer from Ghana, yeah? Yes, Steve. Yeah. It was a stunning song, but pretty sophisticated as well. I would say it was. It wasn't a mass market kind of song, and there's the route that Mukumba took for years, being more appreciated outside the country, and for Mukumba, it's only this latest album that we've playlisted, and they've had hits, and now I think they're loved much more back home now, and they're playing on Sunday at Jacaranda, so that is a route. I mean, Night Freak is probably not appreciated here according to his status globally as well, yeah. So there's different routes you can take. I
was just going to add, like you spoke about Night Freak, he's accepted that out there they appreciate me more than they do back home. Yes, he does come back home and do shows. I think he's doing one in Harare. Yes, he's doing something in Harare for the first time. But if you look at his Spotify numbers, they are, they're huge.
Do you know, I'm so fascinated about how as Zimbabweans we have not used the data, we've not utilized our diaspora, which is like over 112,000 people who stay in the UK. And if you were to add that up of the Zimbabweans who are living in certain epicenters of power, and we haven't been able to use that to our advantage to distribute and to make sure that our arts pops, it's mind-blowing to me. Tari, you've got a question?
Yes, particularly to Sky's Metro and Star FM. So I attended a festival where Jonas Gwangwa gets on stage, and soon after that, Chrisette Mitchell gets on stage, and the energy is the same. And a lot of it had to do with the radio partner that was behind that festival, who push all genres of music. Help me balance, how do we balance that intentionality of the radio stations educating our audience on new genres, and at the same time, the market also dictating which genres are popular and which are not?
Okay. Thanks very much. Like I said when I spoke about Sky's Metro FM, is that we trying to strike a balance whereby we're not following the data 100% of what the market is pushing for, but we also do try and introduce certain trends and certain... I'll give you an example of Madlela. When he came in with his song, Ngamnanku Samamo, it became a huge hit. Not because it was popular on the streets, it wasn't even on social media, but because of the pushing that he got from the radio itself. It helped push his numbers, it helped him when he went to his shows. So it goes back to what Steve said. At times it's a feeling. You come in with something new, we'll sit down and say, guys, is this a hit or a miss? Should we give it a shot? So we do try and experiment and see what comes out of it. At times it's a hit, at times it's a miss.
Yeah. As radio partner, we're pushing Jacaranda artists this week and last week for obvious reasons. But a bit broadly around your question, we will depart from the playlist sometimes if we're going to be telling a story or having a young artist on. The slot where we have a lot of new artists or upcoming artists is with Eric Ndoro on a Sunday morning at 10:30. And a word of advice to artists: countless artists have failed to make it because they haven't woken up in time to be at the studio at 10:30 on a Sunday morning, and they've missed a valuable opportunity. So we had young Gemini about 6 months ago, and we loaded some of her tracks so that it would work with the interview, and now young Gemini's fast up and coming, isn't she? So we do depart where there's a reason to do it or a feeling, yeah.
H1 would be such great help to answer that question. Can we give a mic to H1 so he can sort of like map, because he does a lot of music programming and playlisting. So H1, if you could just take the question and maybe add to Tari before, yeah.
Where do I start? I think adding on to what Steve was saying, as a station, I think we've been deliberate in some of the playlisting moves we've done to really give a push, especially to the emerging artists. So either way, we put them on high rotation so that their music rotates highly on our playlist, and in that manner, it opens doors for them to many people listening to them, like during the various times of the day. And I would like to believe that to most of the artists, it has really worked well for them, because I think we've had conversations with artists who come and tell us that, look, guys, they're grateful for the opportunity we have given them on the station. It isn't playing their music. Then even on other show segments, we have like your Breakfast Club sessions, where we invite artists to come and perform live in the studio, so that the audiences are exposed to the other music these artists would have produced. Yeah, so in a way, these are some of the strategies which we implement to amplify or boost, especially the emerging artists.
Kim has a question, and whilst we get a mic to Kim, Taria, I'm sure you're familiar with the Soul Avenue, right? Yes. So with the Soul Avenue, what we used to do was, when the Soul Avenue started, we used to play the most obvious song when we were curating it. Then over time we realized that, because the thinking was that people want to hear, if it's Luther Vandross, people want to hear a certain Luther Vandross song and what have you. And over time, after the Kaya experience, I came home and I started to do something so different and so daring, where if Tarone Guitar released an album, I would go listen to the album and I would look for a song that I thought would mean something so much to. So we used to keep on rotation, You Inspire Me. Like, who was playing that, right? But over time, what it did was it became the source for people to actually connect with something that was outside of what they were getting everywhere else. So it's also a challenge to all the radio stations to be daring. A lot of the times, audiences don't know what they want. They need to be told. That's why you guys are tastemakers.
Can I also add something there?
Yeah.
Just a quick one to say, at times artists will release a song and bring it to the radio station. Do they have a plan after the song has been played? Because we can continuously play it, but you also need to play your part. Because there's no point for me to play your song, which people can't access afterwards. People look for you online, you don't exist. Your presence is just not there. So there needs to be that combination between what the station is doing and what the artist is also doing on their part.
Absolutely. Kim?
Thank you so much. My name is Kim Makumbe, and I am one of the artists that has definitely been put on the map by radio, especially Star FM. So thank you very much for that. And
you're welcome.
Yes, and my question actually ties into the point that you are making right now. What would you say, since we're talking about data-driven decision-making, what steps should artist brands then take once they've received the hype from radio, from television? What would you say are the best action steps to not only aid them in their careers, but also to keep that dance happening between media and artist brands?
Okay. One metric I didn't mention is the 75% local content, by the way. We're obliged by BAS to play 75% local, so we're always on the side of local artists, and we get the highest percentage of every station. It's quite hard to reach 75%. We're always around 70%, somewhere there. So other stations are not as diligent as Star FM in playing that local artist quota. So we get some artists who will send us 12 tracks for us to playlist. So you've got to have a plan as to what's your single. There's no point sending 12 songs. You need a map that is marked out as to what is your follow-up. First of all, what is your single that you're sending, and then obviously the follow-up and the follow-up after that as well, depending on the response that you get. So yeah, you've got to be looking beyond just the first track, yeah. And we always believed in you, Kim. Since you sang at our music awards, was that about 4 years ago? We always believed in you.
Thank you. I have a question here. How do we get our music videos onto Channel O?
So it's very straightforward. Let me first start by saying you do not pay to get your videos played. There's a lot of fly-by-night agencies that promise people, give me 5,000 and your video will get played. It doesn't work like that, because what happens is your video gets rejected, then Channel O, they took my money, Payola story, all of that stuff. So that's the first point I just want to clarify. You submit your music video on the Channel O website. Once that's done, there's a committee that looks at it. Firstly, it'll be the quality, of course. So you must remember, sometimes there are big songs on radio. It happens a lot that don't have music videos. So by the time they do come with the video, because some artists will take a year to shoot a video, the song is not that popular anymore, but your video is new. And then you, unfortunately, going to get a very short space of time of playlisting, and it becomes a problem as well. So it goes back to the plan of, okay, here's your single. When am I shooting the music video? Where am I creating content for it? Because we don't just play videos. If you've got behind the scenes, documentaries, short form, we can collaborate with you on YouTube. So we do all of that. And after that, it's the touring, right? Because the money is in the performances, not necessarily in the music. So your shows, how are you going to structure your shows? Do you want them to be live on Channel O? Let's have that conversation. But it all comes down to just submitting it online, sending your profile, submitting your lyrics. We've got certain shows where we call it lyrics on the beat, where the video plays, it's like karaoke basically, right? So what that allows is your video can stretch across the channel and not just play on the dedicated playlist, but now it's going to play in a dance hall section at 11 p.m. because it's uncensored as well. There's an uncensored version. Then it's going to play in the lyrics on the beat one. Then you've got a behind the scenes, I think they used to call them EPKs back in the day. Then we accompany that with your video. So there's so many things you can do with one piece of song, and from a video format point of view, that if you put in the work, then it's really up to you, and we are always there to assist. But yeah, on the website, channelo.tv, all the instructions are there. And we've also put the specs on, so it doesn't fail when you deliver it, because some people, obviously, the quality, people are not the same when it comes to how they shoot. People don't have the same finances. But ironically with that, one of the best videos I performed 2 months ago was shot from an iPhone 14 even, not even 15. So, and we didn't know. The guy just told us as a fun fact. So, yeah.
We love it. We're rounding up the question. I think we've got a last question here, then we wrap up the panel.
Thank you for the opportunity. Right. You mentioned something earlier. You said sometimes you see something trending on TikTok, and then you look for the song, and then you play it on your radio station. I wanted to inquire on the issue of royalties. How is the process? Artists, especially artists, getting their royalties as far as their music is concerned?
I'll start. So every quarter, MultiChoice as a group pays a collection agency called Capasso a lot of money, I think in the millions, every quarter. And what that does, it covers the music videos played on the music channels across GateNet, Channel O, Mzansi Magic. It covers the promo work. It covers all other music video, audio content that's on MultiChoice, including SuperSport and everyone else, right? That's the blanket license. How you get your money is when you submitted your piece of content, or when we retrieved it from either a record company or your distributor or your manager, did you have the correct publishing details? Because that's what you go and claim from your collection agency, and we submit what we receive, right? A lot of artists don't get their money because the publishing is not correct from your end, or how you split it, or from your publisher. So that's the most important part. People will come to MultiChoice and say, my video's been playing, but I haven't gotten my money. Little do you know that on the split sheet, when they were making the song, this guy got 0.05%, and somebody else got 99%, and he's not going to see a cent for a while. So it works both ways. We have to make sure we file the correct to Capasso, RISA, and all those collection agencies. But on your end, you have to make sure that you, to the T, that the details are correct.
I'm sure with the radio stations. Wait, why do I not answer for the radio stations? Radio stations.
Well, you can answer. It's okay.
I'm not sure what it's got to do with TikTok, but for radio airplay, you've got your Zumura number, and we send our logs every month to Zumura. And we pay Zumura every month. A lot of radio stations don't, but we're happy to say as Star FM that we're always up to date. And then some of the stuff goes to the previous session that Tanaka was talking about with getting it in writing, isn't it?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, gentlemen. I'll give you each 2 minutes to just wrap up and give us some insights that maybe are burning on your chest, and you're like, I need to tell them this. This is why I got on the plane. Like, this is why I got on the bus. I'll start with you, Pasenti. Any parting shots, parting remarks?
Parting remarks, I think I would like to say thank you very much for the opportunity to come down here and be part of this music business conference. What I would like to say to the artists is you just need to find a way of getting to understand the data that you have in front of you. Because that data that is in front of you is gold for you. We can come in as radio and play our part. We can play the songs, but everything else is in your hands. Thank you.
Yeah, I think same thing, and you mentioned it earlier yourself, that you can have data in front of you, but it's how you use it that's the key. And I beg that you please utilize the free resources that you have for that data. Yes, there's a lot of paid avenues where big brands use to collect data, but you also have in the palm of your hands and use that data. That's it.
Yeah. The 75% requirement was crafted to support you as artists and those in the music industry, so that is a well-intentioned thing. I'll give you a bit of wisdom of Nikki from our breakfast show. She says, real queens show up. So if you're going to push your product, radio is not the whole picture. There's other channels now with social media and so on. But do make sure you show up and push, and make sure you do those radio interviews when you get the opportunity, because as mentioned, a lot of artists fail to pitch up when they get a chance. Mary was on radio at 8:40 this morning on the quiz, on the Breakfast Club quiz, where her team took a hammering because the questions were pretty difficult, but it was another opportunity to push that she's on Jacaranda bill on Saturday. So there's a lot of hard work that you need to do to take advantage of those opportunities. Real queens show up, or real kings show up, but we're really here for you. Also bear in mind how radio works. It's another important metric. As I said, as a commercial radio station, we have to play adverts. We have a certain amount of time allocated for songs, and most of our songs we edit to 3.5 minutes so that it fits on our clock, our schedule. So if your song has got an intro like Tuku that's 90 seconds long, it doesn't really work for radio in this day and age, because there's only 2 minutes left for the actual song once the intro is done. So bear that in mind, that even a radio edit is helpful if you're pushing something because our time is limited and we work within certain constraints. But really, we're very much here for you, and we're so pleased that there's artists that we've been able to push successfully as Star FM. Yeah, thanks.
I remember a time when I was coming up as an artist and loving people from a distance. You would almost always had to guess who loves you, who doesn't like you, how many people can show up, who can show up. Almost everything was guesswork. Now, with the advent of data, which is in abundance, we no longer have to guess. We now know who can potentially come. The question is, how can we make them come? So if you have 12,000, 10,000 followers on your social media, you know that 6,000 of them are in the UK, which means in Zimbabwe, this is where they are. In South Africa, this is where they are. So the potential to do a certain kind of concert in this specific area works the certain kind of way. That's what data allows us to do. It allows us to not shoot in the dark. It allows us to tell the stories to the people who want to hear them. Because that's what we all are, storytellers. We're trying to tell a story to people who care about the stories we're trying to tell. Now, I would like to encourage all the artists, all the event promoters, all the programmers and everyone that we are all the same. Whether we are Stanbic Bank, Jacaranda Music Festival, or we are Channel O, we are all the same. We're just trying to tell a story to people who care about it. And the more we know who exactly wants that story and where we can find them, the more we can be impactful in how we tell that story. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been so fantastic. Help me thank Pacenti, help me thank David, and help me thank Uncle Steve Vickers for being so amazing. I'm not going to burden them to stand right now. We're just going to have the closing remarks. I'm going to tell you a quick story after, but I'd like to call the festival manager, Terone Gitare, just come and close the conference for us, thank a few partners, and do the needful. And after that, I promise you, I've got a cool story for you. Come on, help us.
Pachipamwe. Oh, okay. I was not expecting that. But I don't know about you, but the last 2 days have been just amazing. And if you're clever like me, I think we've got a strategy to work with, especially from the national strategy. If we can just take those 10 points and we craft our strategies along with that and then feed in everything that we've gained from this workshop, I think we'll be at a better place come this time next year. So I just want to thank our sponsors, Stanbic Bank. I think without you, this would not be possible. And thank you for consistently supporting and insisting on this part of the festival, because I think for me, that's the point, right? By the time we get onto the stage, it's now just a celebration of what we've done here. So a big thank you to them, to TDW, and to everyone else who's been behind this particular conference. To all the speakers and the panelists, you guys just selflessly said yes before we even talked terms and conditions. So I think that's a big testament to how everyone is really willing and supportive of this vision of just getting the information out there. And we've got the support. We really have the support that we need, and I think let's take advantage of it and use these platforms. To our partner, Star FM, thank you so much for always just being there and pushing the word out. So profound. You are amazing. Isn't he just amazing? Thank you so much to the live stream team. Guys, you're doing the things. Thank you so much. I think the comments have been coming in that it's been clear and it's been audible. So thank you so much for your amazing professionalism. To the venue, who are our hosts every year, I think we have to come to a point where we now say goodbye to the venue because everyone's full. But thank you for always hosting us and making the best of this space and the time we have together. On behalf of the festival, I just want to thank you all for your support, and we look forward to seeing you at the Stanbic Jacaranda Music Festival this weekend. Thank you so much.
So being the new media nerd that I am, I found myself with an opportunity to be in the biggest radio and media institution in the world, iHeartRadio. So I get to New York, and I'm so excited to be in that room because I thought I was going to see something I've never seen in my life. I get there about an hour, 30 minutes before, because I'm so afraid to be late to miss my opportunity to be in the room, and because I was going to spend some time there. And when I get there, I wait there. I wait and I wait and I wait and wait. For context's sake, traveling around and navigating New York is so hard because of you have to walk distances and trains, and I was new to this whole thing, so I didn't want to risk that. Cool. I get there. The person who is hosting me, his name is Josh Martinez. I get there, I get a pass. We get upstairs and we start touring the place. We start meeting people. We see the studio where the Breakfast Club happens. Angie Martinez is on the A. I see Angie Martinez. Oh my God, this is unbelievable, right? And right at the same time, I'm in the building. I meet a guy called Maxwell House. Maxwell House does drive time on Z100. If you know anything about Z100, it's the biggest pop station in the world, pretty much, right? So if you're being played on Z100, it's as good as you are on the biggest platform in the world in terms of radio. I start talking to Maxwell House, and at this time, my excitement is no longer as big, it's now average, because something occurred to me whilst I was there. That these people in this building have the same challenges as us. I start talking to Maxwell, and the same things I was experiencing in Zimbabwe and thinking that we were so far behind, guess what? They had the same challenges. I left there feeling so depressed because I felt like I'd been sold a dream. Like, how can I come to iHeart and all I have are the same problems as mine? And something occurred to me that more often than sometimes, especially if we exist in markets like Zimbabwe, we often feel like the world is so much bigger and we're so small. When the reality is, the world is so much big, but so are we. Your story is worth a verse. What was so disappointing was being in that room and discovering that my story was worth a verse too. How can it be similar to Maxwell House? Now, as you leave this room, I hope you go out there and be daring to do things, because the world is waiting for your story to be manifested so they can learn about it. You're not different from Beyonce. The difference is just the story that's being... Do you know how long it took for Burna Boy to be in the same room as the people that he probably admired? Just a split second. Do you know how long it took for Trevor to be in the same conversation as his heroes? Because it's not that much of a difference. People are the same all over the world. Remember that. So to every artist, broadcaster, event host, media practitioner, and someone who's just trying to make everything work and it doesn't feel like it, take it from me. People are the same all over the world. The people at Channel O are just trying to figure it out, as the people at Star FM, as the people at Skies Metro, as all of us. So figuring out, knowing that your story is worth a verse. And if you don't catch anything this whole conference, hold on to that and carry it with pride, because your story is worth a verse. And be daring, because we want to hear your story. Look, have a good one. See you next year with Jacaranda, Stanbic Bank Jacaranda Music Festival. See you this weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I hope you already picked out your outfits and the people you want to watch. Make sure you network, make sure you plug into the people, and just make use of all of this. Thank you so much. We out.
Ringateka ntombile bayangena lomuya babu take leswa kushonganya leswa kushombisa lokungari dale ringateka ntombile bayangena lomuya babu teka 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 leswa kushonganya leswa kushombisa lokungari dale